Hello everyone, how you doing? And welcome back to Skye and Evan in the morning. And today we're gonna be talking about it was my recommendation. We're gonna be talking about the 1987 horror film directed by Clive Barker, Hellraiser, which you read the novella also by
I
Clive
did.
Barker before you watched it, didn't you?
I, yeah, it's the funniest thing about this movie. I always knew if I watched it that I was going to have to read the original source material because Clive Barker wrote The Hellbound Heart and then he wrote and directed this film. And this was um, his first feature film. He'd apparently done two short films before and he had writing experience, but this was still like essentially someone just like, hey, can you please give me money to make a movie? I don't really have any experience, and it's worth $1 million apparently. Very
Really?
limited budget. Yeah, and
The
why is that? It
makeup
mostly takes
is
place.
the makeup is amazing for 1 million only.
Yes, I think that the fact that it takes place in one house largely, it's the
Hmm.
same in the book. The book is very,
And there are
minimal in
very
terms of
few
setting.
actors. Yeah.
Yes, and the actors are relatively unknown
Hmm.
actors too. This isn't one that stars big actors. You know, horror can afford to do that usually, but very interesting reading his book and then seeing him put it to screen because I don't know how many examples there are of something like that happening where the author like writes a book and then they adapt it on screen because it
Mm.
was apparently because he didn't like how some of his other work was adapted and he's just like fuck it, I'll do it myself.
Stephen King should
um
do that kind of shit instead of just like complaining all the time. Just like, fuck it, I'll do it myself. I'll do The Shining.
yeah, he has all the money to do. It's just Stephen King is so weird with adaptations and
He
his
is.
opinions on everything. um but yeah, the Hellbound Heart is, for one, by like the story is very similar, like the Hellraiser versus Hellbound Heart, it is pretty damn similar. One of the things is Kirsty, um being Larry's daughter, that was not a thing in the book. She's basically a friend with like some romantic ideas, but it's kind of weird. She just shows up out of nowhere. Like it makes more sense for like a daughter character to be fit into the narrative and to just be hanging around the
Mm.
house and to like come upon Frank.
So the whole
Um
creepy uncle thing, is that not in the book? Or
Not really, not so much. They
because I
definitely
thought that
play
was
that
like
more.
really like one of the more interesting parts of the film was the whole aspect of Frank
That
being like her creepy uncle, like, and the way he treated her was like super icky. Like I thought that was like part of what made the film work.
Yeah, it improves that. It gives like Frank and her a little bit of history between it, like adds to the creepiness and makes it so there's more of a personal connection between them. Um, it's just a simple change that makes the film just that little bit stronger.
Yeah.
In terms of like, because I honestly really loved the novella, but I do think it works well as a novella. If
Hmm.
you wanted to just adapt the Hellbound Heart, I think it might work really well as like a one-off TV episode, almost like Black Mirror. Just like maybe 45 to 50 minutes, that would be
Hmm.
kind of a sweet spot. To get it to 90 minutes, I feel like they did focus a lot on the human characters, and some of it does feel like just getting to a runtime when pacing could have been. I mean, what do you think about the characters in the story and how the film keeps moving along? Because I do think the human characters are a little less interesting, at least outside of the weird Frank couple thing, which is kind of what the whole point of the Hellbound Heart is.
Um, I thought it was interesting. I thought the like I kind of liked that it's kind of like slow burn of like slowly, and we need to bring characters in the wife. Shit, I forgot her name.
Yeah, Julia, I believe, or
Julia, yeah, I think so. Um,
Julia, yeah.
yeah, and she and like her doubting herself, but like her devotion to Frank, even though she's married to his brother, like all of that,
Yeah.
I thought was like super interesting. Like, but I didn't mind the runtime. I feel like it was dragging or anything. And it was kind of it's weird because you think about movies like this of of its time, where these movies kind of just don't have the 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 villain, the monster all that much, like how Jaws really does not have that much of the shark. Obviously it was because, the mechanical shark
Well,
wasn't working properly, blah blah blah. But my point being that like a lot of the time with horror in back in the 80s and 70s, it feels so much like they weren't maybe it was limited due to budget, or maybe they just like wanted to keep it more of a mystery, more off screen, and they don't show too much, and then when it does show is like very like impactful, because like I really like the settle bites at the end with the fucking hooks into Frank's body. Like that was disgusting. Like I was genuinely like freaked out during this film, and I'm not easy to scare with horror, so yeah, I don't know.
yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the shark from Jaws because I mentioned the budget being $1 million and the Cenobites and just all of the effects around them, all the hook imagery, all the just blood and guts that you see.
Uh-huh.
It's not you might think this film is just gore city, but it actually is few and far between. The
Yeah.
Cenobites don't show up that often at all. Um,
I also found the design for
but
Frank, like before he turns fully human, was also terrifying, because it's just like it's basically if you remove the skin of a human and you're just seeing like meat.
yes,
It's fucking gross.
it's the same kind of thing that they do in the book. And I, something that is interesting about Frank in the book, and I do wish they kind of show it later. But the opening of the book is similar, where he gets the box and then he tries like opening it in a ritual. But one of the things I don't think is highlighted all that much in the movie about Frank is that he thinks he's like indulged as much as he can. He's like looking for pleasure in like the most remote corner anywhere because he thinks he's indulged at like as much as a human possibly can, and it's led him to the
Hmm.
Cenobites. And
Right. That
the
was
way
subtext in the
that
film, I
Barker,
feel, like with the whole like
yes,
Julia like getting to the home and seeing a bunch of pictures of Frank sleeping with a bunch of women,
yeah,
and it's just
and
yeah.
well, and by the way, Julia, like I think is nailed in terms of because it's the same dynamic that they have in the book. Like she literally like fucked him before marrying her brother, his brother, and it's such a weird, like that it's a cliche that's existed before. The like I your brother's stronger, or like I look up to
Uh-huh.
him instead, and like you're the inferior one. It is wild the relationship that Frank and Julia have, but it kind of it kind of makes the whole plot of this film because they're realistically, I don't even feel like the Cenobites are the villains of this story. It's just
They're kind of
it's a
like
really bizarre love story
yeah.
that's like essentially a tragedy at the end.
Yeah, I would say like the Cenobites are kind of amoral. They're just like, they just exist there, and like
Yeah.
Frank wanted to try to go after them and for pleasure, which I think is like probably the most interesting aspect. The whole like, oh, I was trapped in they mixed pleasure and suffering to the because my only I didn't
Yeah.
know
That's the
it
whole
was
thing with
this. But when I first watched it, but Rick and Morty has an episode parodying Hellraiser. I don't know if you remember
yeah,
the
yeah,
one
yeah.
with Jerry.
I do.
Yeah. And now knowing where it comes from, I actually think the idea is fairly interesting. Like save your tears, they're a waste of good suffering. Like it's really interesting. The Cenobites, like they enjoy suffering, but they don't cause it like for no reason. I don't know.
Well, yeah, the when the new Hellraiser came out. I'm actually curious because there's a bunch of Hellraiser movies, but a girl played Pinhead the last time, and people pointed out in the original Barker novella the Cenobites, for one, Pinhead doesn't have a name in I don't even think it's mentioned in the original film, and it's not mentioned in the Hellbound Heart. But oh god, where was I going? I lost
The
my train of thought
girl in
again.
the
Fuck.
Hellraiser remake.
Oh yeah. Well, just that, like, people were pointing out, like, people of course wanted Doug Bradley to play Pinhead. It's like no one else can play him, but the Cenobites, all of them, they're described as being almost beyond gender. It's hard to tell what they are,
Mm,
and they also seem to be in constant pain. They sort of nail that, but I always pictured them having nerves exposed and being. It might have just come down to makeup limitations and how much they could illustrate. Because, like I said, 1 million budget. It's impressive. The Cenobites are very interesting aspects of the novel because they just or the novella. Because, like you said, they're almost aimworld or almost beyond time, and they're just a part of this world.
mm-hmm.
Because most of it just takes place on Earth, but there's something bigger going on, obviously. There's like a whole dimension out there.
It is. It is kind of interesting because like there's that scene where she says like, "Oh, you go to hell." We can't.
We
Not with you.
can't, not alone.
Yeah.
That's hell of a line.
Yeah, but it's so interesting the idea of like that this story has in terms of like what hell is. It's just like mixing pleasure and pain to a point where you start to enjoy your own suffering. Like I find that fascinating, as a depiction of hell.
Well, and honestly, as well, the last note when Frank dies, he says Jesus wept
Yeah,
and just fucking explodes. That was insane to behold.
yeah,
And yeah, the book has the same thing going on where it just they come back and she tricks Frank into admitting it, and then they take him away.
yeah.
It's Yeah, this is a fascinating movie. I'm really glad that I read The Hellbound Heart before I watched the movie.
Hmm.
I'm not sure which I'd say I prefer. It's probably the novella, honestly, but it this is a really great because I don't know what other examples there are. Like Barker directed and wrote this. It was one of his earlier projects, but he just adapted his own work, and it's probably the purest way that a book could be adapted, which is the author doing it themselves. And I think he did a respectable job. This could have turned out worse, and could have been an example of an author not working well in film, because
Hmm.
that's the whole thing we were mentioning with Stephen King is just there's a difference between writing a book and making a movie,
Mm.
and some authors don't don't get why things need to be altered in adaptation.
Yeah, yeah. It is interesting, and I found it fascinating. Like I don't know about you, but like I thought the film had like a lot to say in terms of like adultery that I found really interesting. Like the whole like the way she loves the brother like so much, but like the main guy, what's his name? No, Frank's brother,
Larry, I believe, and
Larry. Yeah. He's like
am I?
so he's like so like oblivious to the whole thing. He doesn't know. He thinks she loves him, um, and she's like willing to feed him to Frank, which is crazy. But there's also like the whole thing of like this like flesh monster that needs to feed off the energy from other men, as if like continuing to commit adultery is how to like keep
Well,
this fleshy monster alive. Like it's very interesting of like is like a metaphor for just like
funny too that
cheating.
Frank almost seems to. Yeah, he almost sees that Julia is cheating, bringing the men to the house, and there's that scene where she has where Frank is coming out of the closet with the knife, and when they're like in bed, and it is interesting, the idea of loyalty and
Yeah.
relationships and cheating on people, and Legitimately, Claire Higgins, who played Julia, I think is one of the best parts of this movie. I think
Oh
she
yeah.
kind of nails the. She is not a good person in the novella, and I don't think the film puts you in two headspaces about
Yeah.
a creepy, very troubled woman.
Yeah, she's not a good person, and I thought she was probably the best actor in the film too. She was really great.
Yeah, incredible performance.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, it's just a really interesting film, and that has quite a bit to say about like adultery and some really cool ideas about hell. And I'm glad you read the novella first because I don't know anything about it beyond the film. I mean, my only exposure, like I said, to the Hellraiser
I
franchise have been the Rick and Morty episode. So yeah,
yeah, I don't know if I'd rewatch this movie a lot. I am a little curious what the rest of the Hellraiser movies are like. I
yeah,
cynically I'm like it's probably just franchiseification and some of them probably don't get it. I don't know. You never know. Um but I did I'm very glad that I watched this and I'm very glad that I read the Hellbound Heart first cuz I think they go together well and yeah, it's I recommend Hellraiser. It's I was never I just never bothered, you know. I was one of
mm,
those things I was never too interested, but glad I have an excuse because it was solid stuff.
yeah, yeah. So I guess you would recommend it.
No, I'd recommend it. Would you?
I absolutely would. I mean, if you're not a fan of like gore or just creepy
Yeah.
effects or huge like
Well,
fleshy monsters, then no.
well, and hilariously, also, if you're expecting that, if you're expecting something like Saw, like
Yeah, there's
I,
not
I almost
that
look at,
much. Yeah,
yeah, the Cenobites are barely in it, so it's like it's more, like I said, like a tragic love story with
yeah,
some really twisted people
yeah,
at the center of it. So
yeah. And yeah, the most creepy part and what's prevalent in most of it is just Frank's fleshy like body, instead of the Cenobites and the whole like weird creepy monsters. Um, they just go kind
yeah,
of overboard at the end, but before then, it's not that much.
it's almost like Cronenberg's The Fly, where it's body horror surrounding like one main character rather than with the Cenobites on the side and being what created that situation, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I would recommend it. I think it's a very interesting film, and I'm glad I watched that. I probably will watch the sequels at some point. I've been really getting into like watching old horror franchises and their sequels. I'm doing that for Halloween right now. I watched the first two, which by the way, fucking confusing as a number of films, order of films. Jesus Christ. But yeah, and I hopefully will do that with Hellraiser too, because it is an interesting concept, and I wonder what other filmmakers can say in this universe, which is part of why I like
I've
these whole like
heard
franchiseifications, because it's like you because like we were talking about this earlier with Nightmare on Elm Street, that you only watch the first one, and it's like, well, it's very 80s thing of like the sequels. It's not the same guy who made the first one, so don't really want to show up for it. But I kind of love exactly that it's not the same people involved with the first one, because it's like saying something new with the same idea, but not like rehashing the same story. Other than like Halloween 2, which is like almost a carbon copy of the first one. But yeah, I don't know.
well, I would be curious to see what other themes and ideas. I've heard that the new Hellraiser is largely about addiction, like drug addiction.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. It's just an idea to explore similar where, you know, pleasure seekers or people that are like
Mm-hmm.
it's never enough or always chasing that extra high. That could work. There's different I, like I said, just the cynic in me is worried that it'd be something where the filmmakers don't get it, but I could see alternative takes that
Mm-hmm.
use this world very well. So you never know.
Yeah. All right. Well, Evan, it is time for your recommendation. What will we watch next week?
Next week, this week is I recommended ambulance themed movies for my milestones as an EMT.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I'm gonna be ending my tenure as an EMT, at least for the time being, next week. Though I'm still doing paramedic prereqs. One of my EMT partners recommended is written by an experienced paramedic, and he made it with like someone that was kind of a friend of his growing up, and it apparently is a really accurate, really good just movie about ambulances and being an EMT. And Code 3, it stars Rainn Wilson. So
Code
that's what I'm
3.
going with. Code
Okay.
3.
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
It's pretty new. I think it came out last year or early this year,
2025, yeah,
and yeah,
apparently.
on Hulu, I believe. So flew under the radar, but yeah, small little movie. I'm curious to check it out if it gets decent reviews. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
No idea. Like it's like that's a recommendation from a friend. So I do not know.
It's this guy's second film he's directed. He directed another one in
Yeah,
2015, so 10 years without making a film. Okay.
it happens. There's directors out there that I always find that so funny. Like the guy who directed Tar hadn't made a movie since like the early 2000s. It's like, what were you doing all that time? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's like John Carpenter. He's still around. He just doesn't want to make movies.
Yeah, guy's retired. He's working on music with his kids.
Yeah, music and playing video games. It's awesome. Good for him.
Yeah, John Carpenter's fucking king. It's
He
great.
is cool. But yeah, okay, Code 3. Was not expecting that. All right. Well, folks, thank you very much for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, obviously. Follow us if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Music, or the other podcast places. Evan's channel is in the description. You get these episodes early if you subscribe to Patreon or become a channel member. And I think that's it. I think these are all the things I need to show.
Indeed. But on my channel, by the way, just as an update, I did start going back to my video. It'd been like a month solid before since I'd touched it editing wise, but I did go back to it. I'm working on my last sweep. It's my original plan was for it to come out in February. It's obviously not going to happen, but I'm working on it. It will come out.
Yeah. All right. We'll catch you later then, folks. Bye bye.
Catch you later. Bye bye.